The NBA playoffs are here, and I'm getting my bets in on FanDuel. Talk to me, Chuck GPT. What do you know?
All sorts of interesting stuff, even Charles Barkley's greatest fear.
Hey, nobody needs to know that.
New customers bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets if you win. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook.
21 plus and present in select states.
Must be first online real money wager. $5 deposit required. Bonus issued is non-withdrawable bonus bets that expires 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See full terms at FanDuel.com/sportsbook. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
The Red Apple Media Podcast Network presents This is Protecting America. Now, here's Emmy-winning journalist Rita Cosby.
And welcome to another edition of Protecting America. I'm Rita Cosby. Well, an official impeachment inquiry into President Biden is now opened as his own son, Hunter Biden, thumbs his nose at a congressional subpoena. And joining us now to talk about all of this is Gregg Jarrett. He is the Fox News legal analyst. He's also the author of 4 great books. His latest one is The Constitution of the United States and Other Patriotic Documents, which were collected and explained by New York Times bestselling author Gregg Jarrett. Gregg, great to have you here on the podcast.
Rita, good to be with you. It's been quite a day. Lots of events occurring.
What does it mean that now there is an official, formal impeachment inquiry into the sitting president of the United States?
Well, it elevates the authority of the investigating committee. And, it's vital for legal authority to compel compliance with subpoenas. Without it, the witnesses would continue to dodge testimony and defy demands to cough up the many documents they're hiding. That's what Biden allies have been doing. They've been obstructing and sandbagging the investigation, trying to stall it to protect the Bidens. And, we do think of the impeachment process as an inherently political one, but it does involve legal elements. And to force people to cooperate, the committee needed greater legal standing, and the vote accomplishes that.
How much of a powerful vote, but also to your point about politics, because it was down party lines?
Yeah, it was. But, that's not at all unexpected. There were a lot of people over the last couple of months within the Republican Party who were reluctant to do this. And just so your listeners understand, we're not talking about a vote on impeachment. We're talking about a vote on approving and formalizing the impeachment inquiry, the investigation itself. It doesn't mean down the line that there will be an impeachment. But, it operates certain legal levers so that when people like Hunter Biden defy a valid, legally enforceable subpoena, the committee can take one of several actions to force him to appear and testify. Now, given the most recent indictment against him over tax crimes, I suspect he will exploit that as an excuse to invoke the Fifth. But nevertheless, he has to go through the process. And, he doesn't get to decide. No one who receives a subpoena gets to decide the conditions of, I only want it to be a public hearing. No, depositions are routine in a situation like this, and they're more valuable than a public hearing, which is exactly why Hunter Biden didn't want to appear.
Explain why also behind closed doors you can often get more details. It prepares you for the public laying, because a lot of people are saying, well, if the Republicans don't have anything to hide, have him do it publicly. But there's a real value to first doing it behind closed doors.
Yeah, because the people who ask the most penetrating questions, the people who are most knowledgeable about the incriminating evidence, are not the members of Congress who tend to grandstand with speeches at public hearings and accomplish very little. Now, the people who do the meat and potatoes of the questioning behind closed doors in a deposition are the investigators hired by the committee. These are lawyers who are skilled in the art of cross-examination. They are the ones who are actually armed with the damning evidence with which they'll confront Hunter Biden and other witnesses. So, listen, I've taken hundreds of depositions of witnesses, and they're incredibly valuable. But those public hearings generally are not.
Hunter Biden was very brazen, I thought, showing up. There he is at the Capitol. He shows up, of course, on the Senate side. He's supposed to appear on the House side. Talk about why that's significant.
Yeah, I mean, people keep asking, where's Hunter, he said. I'm here, but, I'm not going to testify. He tried to, this was nothing more than a stunt. He tried to portray himself in front of television cameras as a victim, saying, oh, gee whiz, I've been belittled and dehumanized. They've been trying to embarrass my dad, who's devoted his life to public service. Yeah, and graft. So I think he did himself no favors. I think this boomeranged against him. If there were any Republicans who were on the fence about voting to approve the impeachment inquiry, I think that put him over the edge and against Hunter Biden. And I'm surprised that Abby Lowell, who's as skilled a lawyer as he is reputationally, would be dumb enough to pull this maneuver. It didn't go over well.
The other issue, too, is he goes to the Senate side, right? So the sergeant of arms on the House side, explain why that's significant, because something could have happened if he showed up on the House side.
Yeah, there are two ways you can compel compliance with subpoena, three ways. So one is you go to the U.S. attorney. Another is the committee itself files a civil lawsuit to compel compliance. Then the third, which is almost never used, and it's probably used more than 100 years ago, is to have the sergeant at arms take custody of the refusing witness. That's why they chose the other side of the Capitol, where the sergeant at arms has no jurisdiction on that side.
Ready to make a real impact every day? Join the Active Day Home Care team and help clients maintain their independence in the comfort of their own homes. Make a difference in someone's life as you provide essential daily assistance and protect their health and happiness. Earn up to $20 an hour and enjoy additional perks like optional daily pay, 401k, paid time off, ongoing educational training, and more. Join a team that values care, compassion, and your professional growth. Visit activeday.com to apply.
What do you make of the fact that here is Joe Biden, who constantly said, well, listen, you can't defy subpoenas. You can't do this. This was when it was Republicans, when it's about Bannon, it's about Navarro. And here's his son. He's really in a pickle, the president, because he is rode on, well, I'm going to have the most ethical presidency ever.
Well, almost everything that Joe Biden promised as he ran for president has proven to be a lie or a deception. He promised to be the most moderate president. He's not. He's among the most liberal ever. And, he promised to be a healing influence. No, he's been mostly divisive, and his approval ratings are now at an historic low. I saw one of them at 37% approve of Joe Biden. I'd like to meet the 37% and check their pulse. But Joe Biden has done this to himself. He has long been known in Washington circles as a guy who leveraged his position of power over decades to benefit his family financially. And, the allegations against him are serious and credible, Rita. I mean, there's compelling evidence of impeachable conduct by the president. He appears to have actively aided and abetted corrupt schemes operated by his son, netting tens of millions of dollars from foreign interests while selling access and promises of influence, exploiting a public office to enrich your family or others is not only a criminal offense called bribery in the criminal codes, but it's an impeachable offense. And Joe Biden has clearly been lying all along. Originally, he's, I never talked with my son. I had no idea what he did for a living. Then suddenly, when the evidence emerged, it was, I was never involved in my son's business. Today, Hunter, moved the goalposts yet again and said, well, my father was not financially involved. So does that mean he was actually involved in the influence peddling schemes, but he didn't benefit financially himself? And even that seems rather specious, since $40,000 in Chinese money ended up in his bank account. So, the more that the committee investigates, the more incriminating evidence seems to bubble to the surface. And, we may have only seen the tip of the iceberg so far.
Where do you think this now formal impeachment inquiry is going? Do you think they'll be able to get more bank records, get people to talk? How far do you think this will go?
There had been witnesses who were refusing to comply with subpoena to turn over documents by citing the failure of the House to formalize an impeachment inquiry. Well, now that has happened, they can't use that as an excuse. So I think this will force people other than Hunter Biden to capitulate, to turn over documents and to appear for depositions, including people like Eric Schwerin, a longtime Hunter Biden associate and partner, who would regularly visit with Joe Biden at the White House, communicate with him with pseudonyms and fake accounts. Tony Bobolinsky, I think, will be testifying soon, although he was happy to do so willingly. But there are others, including Biden family members, and now they're going to be hard-pressed to resist.
Do you think that this could lead to a potential impeachment of the president, or is it all just to unveil the facts, given it's a political year?
Well, I think the wiser course would be to simply expose the facts to the American public, allow them in a presidential election year to make the decision. It's abundantly clear to me that these criminal prosecutions against Donald Trump are nothing more than election interference, an effort by Democrats to knock him out. You don't want to do the same thing to Joe Biden, or at least be perceived by some as doing that. And I guarantee you that if the House moves for impeachment this next year in the middle of an election, the Democrats will howl and people will believe that this is election interference, that they're trying to take away the decision making as to who should be our next president away from the voter. So I think the better course of action is to accumulate as much evidence as possible, make it available to the public, make your case in public venues, and let the voter decide. Voters tend to be pretty smart and aware. They pay attention. And, almost 70% in a recent Associated Press poll found that Joe Biden either did something illegal or unethical. That's an astounding number, nearly 70%. So, the American public may have been slow to realize what was going on, but I think they've wised up.
Your book, this is your fourth one, Gregg Jarrett, is called The Constitution of the United States and Other Patriotic Documents. What can we learn from the Constitution? Because, boy, I feel like there are so many constitutional issues here facing Joe Biden, facing President Trump, too, as he is seeking the presidential immunity. There's a lot of big issues.
Yeah, the immunity question has constitutional aspects to it. The current civil trial in New York, trying to take his business away from him, is a clear violation of the First Amendment protections of commercial speech. I wrote this document really as this book, The Constitution of the United States and Other Patriotic Documents, as a tribute to the many patriots who have made America great. We're a beacon of liberty and prosperity and justice throughout the world. And so in this book, you can read 65 of the most important documents, speeches, and letters of our, esteemed leaders through 230 years. Many of those documents and writings changed the course of history. These are inspiring words and galvanizing ideas. They shaped America, our virtues, our ideals, and our aspirations. And, I'm very proud of the book. I spent a couple of years, in archives and libraries collecting all of these documents, selecting the most important ones, and I explain them throughout the book so that people have a better understanding of how blessed we are to live in this great country with cherished principles and rights.
I love that you're talking about this because I so appreciate the Constitution. I mean, how timely all these documents that so many of our, great leaders throughout history that they have written, and especially, of course, our founding fathers. When we put it all together and you look at it now, does the document seem more relevant? And were there others out of these 65 that you talked about? I'm jealous of you because I think it's so fun that you got to spend that time, Gregg. I love it. That really stood out to you or surprised you, especially given what we're facing right now at this moment in history?
Yeah, I mean, the Constitution as well as the Declaration of Independence were such incredibly brilliant words and ideas forming this new government that had never been tried before. And I try to put that in perspective, the brilliant people who put it together. But also throughout history, I find some incredible figures. Frederick Douglass really stands out. An escaped slave, an abolitionist icon. He said, "We the people" does not mean we the white people. He deplored the cruelty and deprivation of, 4 million people in human bondage. And he really precipitated a sea change in public opinion. And I don't forget the suffragettes, Elizabeth Cady Stanton, Victoria Woodhull, Susan B. Anthony. These are people who said, that the Constitution makes no distinction of sex. Women are the equals of men. And frankly, they're the superiors of men in many instances, which brings me to my last point. You asked who wasn't in the book that I would like to have been in the book. Abigail Adams, who was the intellectual equal of her husband, John Adams, who was, quite brilliant in his own right. And, her many letters that have been preserved throughout history really quite astonishing for a woman who had no formal education. She was the conscience of John Adams and helped guide him in our, nascent America back in the late 1700s. And, maybe there's a volume 2 here, and I would probably lead with Abigail Adams. I wish I could have put her in the book, but, we had limitations.
Fellas, Degree Cool Rush deodorant, right? Well, last year they changed the formula, and guys were mad about it. One dude even started a petition. So guess what? Degree heard us, admitted they messed up, and brought the original Cool Rush scent back exactly how it was. And it's in Walmart, Target, and other stores now for under $4. So grab some and remember why its cool, crisp, and fresh scent made it the #1 men's antiperspirant for the last decade. Degree Cool Rush is back, and it smells like victory for all of us.
Well, that does sound like a follow-up for you, my friend, because I'm sure you've got 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th book in the works, and your books are always gangbusters. Before I let you go, how do you think some of these people, as we're talking about, our founding fathers, and some of these who've just shaped our history, I think of, as you talked about, Frederick Douglass, some of these people who really were such iconic leaders and at the most turbulent times in history. We look at what we're going through now, Greg, and I think as we're talking about, Joe Biden, Hunter Biden, President Trump, we're in a presidential year. You and I have covered politics for God knows how many years, and it's been the craziest moment. But then you step back and see these other turbulent times and say, okay, well, we can get through this. How do you think A, this moment reflects on other times in history, and B, how some of these leaders throughout history, if they could look up from above and say what they're thinking, what do you think they would imagine what we're doing now in terms of, all these things, especially all the 91 charges against Trump and all the things that are entangled in politics today?
They would be mortified, but they would also say, I told you so. John Adams cautioned about men in power becoming ravenous beasts of prey. George Washington, in his farewell address, warned about the divisiveness of political parties that could ruin our democracy. Well, he was right about that. But I will say this. Our Constitution is a stern and steady document, and it has, for more than 2 centuries, withstood one challenge after another in American politics, and it will endure. So whenever you're in a tumultuous moment, as we are now in America today, you fear the worst. And, you listen to some people who say, if Donald Trump is elected president, it's the end of democracy, the end of America. Well, these are ignorant people who don't understand the strength of our constitutional republic. And these are the people who are in desperate need of reading my new book, The Constitution and Other Patriotic Documents.
Well said, my friend. Well, thank you for covering so many really important and timely perspectives. And also write that next book with Abigail Adams. I think you got a good one in there. Everyone, be sure to subscribe and share to this podcast. And Gregg Jarrett, thank you for all you do to preserve our great history, to shine a light on it, and also to inspire us during, I think, what are such crazy times right now, but putting it in perspective so beautifully. Again, the book is called The Constitution of the United States and Other Patriotic Documents, collected and also explained by our great guest today, the best-selling author and Fox News legal analyst, my friend Gregg Jarrett. Greg, thank you so much.
Rita, it's always my pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
And everybody, I'll be back soon with another great edition of Protecting America. And of course, you can catch me every weeknight, 10 p.m. to midnight on the legendary WABC Radio. This is Rita Cosby, and thanks for all you do to protect America.
Hello, folks. Larry Kudlow here. Pay attention, because China is leading the largest anti-American alliance since World War II. One that's already dumped U.S. bonds, grabbed 43 million acres of our farmland, and is plotting to dethrone the dollar. That's why IRA and 401k savers are protecting their savings with gold. Please go to freegoldguide.com/Kudlow or just call 800-621-3908 for your free gold guide on how to protect your wealth with gold 100% tax-free.